There's not as many fine carpenters, ornamental plaster people who can work with decorative metal and steel. Years ago, when I was like in high school and stuff, I mean, I remember all summer long seeing DeVry and Lincoln Tech commercials and stuff, and they taught trades.
Right.
If you look at those ads now, it's as if everything is a computer job. There are people who make lots of money, who run businesses that have high profit margins and require relatively low effort. Construction's not one of those.
Well, today I'm joined by Matt Cain, president of Tatum Brown Custom Homes. Matt, thank you so much for joining me. How are you doing today?
Yeah, appreciate the invite.
Absolutely.
Happy to be on.
Well, Matt, if you can just start and tell me a little bit about what you do at Tatum Brown and how you got your start in the business.
Yeah, so I am the president of Tatum Brown. And what we do for a living is we build high-end residential custom homes. A lot of people in our realm do a lot more speculative work. We do mostly build-to-suit for private homeowners, and we work with really talented architects and craftspeople from all over the U.S. As far as how I got my start in business, at a young age, I kind of had an interest in construction and architecture and just enjoyed kind of watching it as a young kid. And so I was always drawn to it. I ended up studying building science in college and so started working construction in the summers during college and enjoyed it more. But just stuck with that really. And so when I first got out of school, I worked in commercial construction for quite a few years. Got to work on some pretty neat big projects, a few like high-rise buildings and then a big airport terminal. But eventually I started to realize I didn't really want to do the bureaucracy of really large companies. And so I left and worked for a really small company for a while. Was not real enthusiastic about what we built. Just didn't get a lot of gratification out of that, which was strange because that was one of the things that drew me to construction. And I had the opportunity to go and create an estimating department for another high-end residential builder and just loved it. Loved being able to work on meaningful architecture. And so I've been doing that for almost 20 years now. So that's kind of my start.
Well, it's a very exciting story. President of a custom home builder. So what are some resources that have helped you on the journey, or maybe some key people in your life? Because construction isn't in your family, right? It was a kind of a new field for you, right?
That's right. Yeah. I come from a family of attorneys. Honestly, probably the biggest influence in just making me think I could jump into something that wasn't a family thing. Construction is a big family business in general, not my family, but just lots of construction companies have family businesses. And my dad was one of those guys that he was everybody says you have two parents out there, two types of parents, the ones that try to keep you realistic and then the ones that tell you can do anything you want. My dad was the dad that, when I was a junior in college, would have told me you could still be an astronaut if you want. No, Dad, I think that ship has sailed.
Awesome.
But it did kind of always take that mental barrier to entry down. So that's probably where my entrepreneurialism comes from as well. That was key to just about everything I've done professionally. With regard to construction specifically, I went to Auburn. Auburn is a great building science school. Auburn, when I started in 96. It was pretty small. There were 23 kids in my class. Wow. It was a school of almost 24,000 people. But in our little school, like my year, there was 23 people, and you went through all your classes with that group of 23 from the time you got into the school to the time that you graduated. And so you got a lot of personal attention from teachers. And we were the only program that I've ever heard of that required a thesis. So I had to go out and find a real project, estimate that project, take it through billings, take it through schedules. It was the closest thing that you can imagine to having a real job while you're still in college. And so that was really beneficial to when I first entered the workforce. I felt like I knew how to work, and so many people on their first job, they're just figuring out how any job works, right? How work works.
Right.
They don't know how to organize themselves. They don't know how to execute a list of tasks. So, and this is something I still deal with a lot because I hire people, and I hire some people straight out of college, and it's constantly a huge focus of give them the tools they need to actually work, because no one's taught them that yet.
So speaking of tools, what are the most important tools for a president of a luxury home builder? What are some indispensable tools in your day-to-day to run the business?
So that's interesting. There's the intangible tools of just not letting things linger. I mean, and that's not unique to the position of president, but it's everybody in construction. Is people have a tendency to let some issue or something sit on their desk a little too long, and that really affects progress for us, and then eventually that's dollars. So just jumping on the big client issues absolutely as fast as possible, and having the wherewithal to know how to handle those client conversations. More tangibly, I would say having a good system, just a personalized system of keeping up with your things you need to do. In what we do, and I coach this with a lot of our people, is, you have to understand the number of inputs you have, whether they're up or down the chain from you. You've got people asking you for stuff, and there's a lot coming at you, and you've got to keep up with it. And so I'll coach young guys, hey, while you're starting out, if you don't have that many inputs, write everything down. I'll buy you a nice moleskin notebook. I want to see you write everything in it, keep up with all your stuff. And as they progress in their career, the need comes to introduce technology, right? Because it becomes too hard to keep up with everything if you're writing it all down and constantly having to update that. So we'll pay for products like OmniFocus or Evernote, or we give everybody Microsoft to do just anything that can help them keep up with and execute those small tasks that come up. For me, I would say, it does vary. I switch it up every once in a while just to keep myself fresh and try to make sure that I'm not growing too reliant on a system and then forgetting what's in it. I try not to keep too much in my head, so I like things to be written down. I like things to be, listed out, if you will.
Yeah.
Professionally, we use tools like scheduling softwares and project management softwares and things like that definitely help with the day-to-day work of just a general contractor. And at the end of the day, we're more like a commercial general contractor than we are like a traditional home builder. We tend to take a pretty sophisticated approach to most of those things.
Good answer. So you mentioned hiring. I'm curious. I was up last night just thinking about some questions to ask you. And so in the high-end space, is it tougher to hire the skilled, finisher labor, or hiring someone like yourself with a degree in construction management or whatnot?
So yes, it's hard to hire them all.
Yeah.
So first, with regard to just like the crafts person that you brought up, that is a dwindling art. All right, so there's just not as many out there. There's not as many fine carpenters, ornamental plaster people who can work with decorative metal and steel, people who can forge.
And is there a school for that, or that's all apprenticeship-based talents?
There are schools for it. it does tend to be apprenticeship based in reality. There's not a lot of people on the job sites who actually went to school for those things. There's technical schools, but years ago when I was like in high school and stuff, I mean, I remember all summer long seeing DeVry and Lincoln Tech commercials and stuff, and they taught trades.
Right.
If you look at those ads now, it's as if everything is a computer job. All they teach is new ways to work with computers. And then we don't have in our high school systems, public high school systems, the programs like shop and wood shop and mechanic shop and things like that we used to have either. And it's a real disservice I feel like we leave behind a whole group of kids who learn better with a tool in their hand.
I agree.
They don't just learn better. They don't learn better only to use that tool. They learn how their mind works. They learn how to break down a problem, and it improves their skills in the classroom across the board, in my opinion. And it's a real disservice that we've done by not having that as an option anymore. That has contributed an enormous amount to the fact that we don't have craftsmanship. There's also just not a huge group of people who seem to be super interested in entering the trades, and governmentally, we don't make it much easier either. It's almost as hard in the state of Texas to become a plumber as it is to get your undergraduate degree. So, I mean, that is just a little, and it's not that plumbers don't have a high level of expertise. It just shouldn't be quite that hard for someone to break into the trades.
Now, for someone, let's say they see themselves sitting in your shoes in, say, 20 years and looking to get into business, what's the best advice for someone looking to gain, the valuable experience to get those upward, I guess, mobile roles?
Well, first, I would probably say that I think most of the kids who go to school, who get degrees in construction management, building science, think that's what they want eventually, that they want to be the president of a company or they want to run their own company. As someone who's done it for multiple companies, I would tell you that most of them don't know what they want. They've received advice from someone that that's what they should want. And I think I see a lot of miserable people who fight for that and end up not enjoying it. The thing that I would tell them is that mine is what I would call a high effort business, right? There are people who make lots of money, who run businesses that have high profit margins and require relatively low effort. Construction's not one of those. I have clients who demand an extremely high level of service. I have subs and architects who are more craftsmen and artists than business person that I constantly have to coach up. So there's always a problem. There's always at least 5 or 6 problems that need my attention, and it requires a lot of energy and a lot of effort. I would tell them to have the most realistic view of that they possibly can. I would tell them that a strong understanding of what it is that they're building is necessary, because at the end of the day, I am responsible for the level of quality that we build to. Now, there are a lot of people who work with me who know way more than I do, but I have to know enough to know which ones they are. And that's not always easy to tell. There are a lot of people who fake it really well. And that's always tough.
Like in every field, yeah. What's a common myth about your job or area of expertise, you think? Or what do you run into as a common myth with your clients or people who think they know what you do? Or if there isn't one, that's fine too.
Yeah, I don't know that there's a common myth. I think in general, people think general contractors are hiding something from them. We go out of our way to put every piece of backup and information we can in front of a client to make sure they understand the numbers, because the numbers are hard to swallow sometimes. The numbers are big, and especially in today's market, they're super unpredictable also.
What is your biggest work challenge right now, and how are you tackling it?
So I said earlier, I've been doing this for almost 20 years. The last 2 years, 2.5 years, have been the craziest years. They've been busy and super unpredictable. And so I'm still, frankly, dealing with challenges that have been brought up in that time. So, I mean, we started with COVID and not knowing how that was going to affect our job sites, especially here in Dallas County. We didn't know if Judge Jenkins was going to shut us down. And so there was a lot of unpredictability about that. And then we would lose manpower occasionally. Then we had a lot of material shortages and supply chain issues. And then everybody got super busy on top of that because everyone started coming to live here and building at the same time. So it has been nuts, and every day seems to bring a new issue. And because our projects are so big, they will last anywhere from 18 months to 2 years. So I still have a lot of projects I started in the middle of that that aren't done yet. So probably my biggest issues right now are having to deliver bad news with regard to how that's affected budgets and schedules. It's never fun, but it's my job, frankly, to sit in front of the client and explain it to them.
You must be an excellent mediator. I mean, you're building, their personal home. I'm sure emotions get high, mistakes or anything like that. So would you agree with that? Do you think that's a big part of your job, is just being a mediator or, delivering bad news?
It is a big part of my job. I don't know how good I am at it. It's one of those things that I don't think anybody just loves the guy who delivers bad news. And I would like to say that's not all I do. Most of our clients are very happy, bad news or not, because they recognize that we've been real transparent and worked real hard to try to insulate them from these problems. I will say that my job, because it is residential, it can be very emotional. I have had the pleasure of building the homes of people who run 4 other very large construction companies in my career. And so these are people who know exactly what we do. They know the world we live in and all the challenges that we have. And then they come and sit down in the room with me, and it's like all bets are off, and it can be very emotional. And I kind of laugh about it afterwards. Like, I mean, you know what I'm going through, and they do, but it's different when it's their home.
Absolutely.
So that's true of every one of my clients.
So have you been seeing, are most of your clients local to Texas, or are you seeing many transplants? I'm curious, in the high-end market, does that even, are you seeing a change with all the growth we've been seeing here?
I have 3 clients right now that moved here from California and 1 that has moved here from New York.
Wow.
So that's 4 out of, I believe we have 15 jobs going on at the moment. So it's quite a few.
And are they moving here for, they're moving their businesses here? I'm just kind of curious. What do they tell you the reason why they're moving to Texas? Because I'm seeing a lot of it too. And I'm curious at that end of the market, what kind of the motivator is.
It's a little all over the map. Some of them are moving here and not moving their businesses here. Now, I don't know if that is an attempt to avoid hefty income taxes in the states that they're in, or if it's just a perceived more comfortable lifestyle here. I do have a few who actually moved their entire business here, but it seems to be a little bit of everything. I have some that have sold their businesses and chosen to move here, so it's a bit of all of it.
How do you see, I guess, the next 3 to 5 years with just kind of, dealing with the COVID stuff we've been dealing with and how that's impacted everything, the supply chain stuff? Are you seeing things normalize, or just, with interest? I guess your market, probably interest rates, I mean, they doesn't even affect them, or does that?
Well, interest rates So for the first 10 years that I did this, I maybe had a bank involved in 2 of the projects that I worked on. And it was usually just because the client didn't want to, they didn't want to take the money out of whatever they were. Often it's a publicly held company, something like that. They don't want to pull money out, scare shareholders, things like that. That was the Enron thing. When Enron happened, they had a lot of money in their houses, and so that became a big red flag. The next 10 years, I barely had a project that didn't have a bank involved because interest rates were so low. I don't think people felt like there was any reason to touch their money. It was making more money for them than the interest rate was going to be. Now we're in a little bit of a weird stage because interest rates are high, but they're invested in a market that's down and they don't really want to pull their money out. So I think that it's going to be a little all over the place right now. Some clients will choose to take the high interest rate and some will choose to liquidize a little bit. So it's hard to say for sure. Where it does affect us is in the other construction markets. So when interest rates are high, production building really slows down, which makes lumber and drywall and some labor a little more available to me. As far as the market's normalizing, I don't know, man. We've seen lumber come down to pre-COVID rates, and that's great. It doesn't really hit us right away. Like, there's a lot of different reasons why just because raw lumber goes down that the lumber you buy at the store doesn't go down for a while. Some of it is because it was produced at a higher rate, so they're going to sell that all off before it goes down. Some of it is just because the man-made materials are still real high in labor, so things like prefabricated trusses and stuff like that, plywood. I mean, there's still a lot of other factors that go into it other than just the lumber rate. So I would say in aggregate, I have not seen construction costs come down a lot. But if we have a recession, I do think that we'll see a correction. Depends on the length of the recession. It kind of, if it's a quick bounce, things staying the same will be great.
Yeah.
If it goes down for a while, I think we'll start to see some corrective costs across the board. But then that's not good in a lot of other ways. So
really interesting times, and great to hear your perspective on things, Matt. Thank you so much for joining me today. Where can people find more about you and Tatum Bryan?
Yeah, you can definitely look up our website at tatumbrown.com. And we have an Instagram page as well under the same name and a Facebook page. So love for people to check it out.
All right. Thank you so much.